Hello, wonderful biology class. I'm not gonna lie, I already recorded like probably half of the lecture, and I'm having to start over. So I'm gonna make my monologue very short, which I know that's your favorite part of the chapter, but unfortunate. I'm kind of in the mood to get back to where I was. So let's keep it short and sweet here. We're talking about protists and we're talking about fungi. Okay, protist is a very general term. We're gonna split the term protist into two kingdoms. Remember, you learned about 7 kingdoms, I believe. 2 of them will be protist, which we will talk about today, at least somewhat. The other kingdom we will talk about in this chapter is fungi. Okay, this kingdom is very tough. It's very weird, even for biologists. It's hard to classify them. Some things are fungi, some things aren't. The criteria changes. It's super weird. So unless you want to be like a microbiologist or like a field biologist, you probably won't deal with a lot of fungi. But if you do, that would be amazing. We should talk in the future, and I will have many questions for you, mostly about all of your rules and exceptions. Well, it's a lot like English, which we all know that, me and English, it's like, oil and water, baby. We don't mix. All right. But anyway, some people do. Some people are about that life, not me. But let's talk about protist today. Let's go over some housekeeping stuff. Okay, everyone did pretty exceptional on chapter 12 exam. Very pleased with the results for the most part. This chapter is a little weird. Technicalities. Pay attention to things I say. I'm very upset that this is kind of the way I'm delivering the lectures, but this kind of the point I'm at. Keep in mind, I will always have the students back. I will always vouch for the student first. This is probably how the next 2 lectures will come, at least. Okay. Wednesday and Thursday AMI work. Friday there's no school, so I'm not posting a lecture. Keep in mind, I'm videoing it. I'll move the camera around some and show you some demonstrations. I will show you my notes. I will post my notes. If you can keep up with them. I feel like some of you will hate the way I take notes, but you can get over it. But point being, we're going to talk a lot about, well, let me back up. We will do a lot of this chapter of me recording it. Potential, we may not meet in the classroom for a while. Why am I saying that? Okay. I am very likely to be out Monday and Tuesday of next week. We do not have school the remaining week, so we may not meet each other in the classroom for a long time. Is class going to go on? Yes. Am I going to help you out? Yes. I can just see your faces now. If we were in the classroom, y'all would just be like freaking out, right? And no, we're not having free days. Okay, just go ahead and shut that box now. But I will at least deliver 2 lectures this way, and possibly more. Okay, but again, I will post my notes. I will over-explain stuff like I always do. I'm here for questions. Most of you have my email, and so on and so forth. We will touch base on this entire chapter when we meet again in the classroom. We will potentially not see each other in the classroom for a long time. That's a relative term, more like a week, or maybe a little more than a week, depending on how things shake out. So let's pray about it. Let's see what the Lord has in store for us, and we will rejoice no matter what, as I hope that we can get back to the elite budding of these brilliant biologists that we unfortunately have been stripped of for the time being, which I know you are all sad about. I am also sad, but the show must go on. It will go on. We don't want to hold any biologists back. I know how much you love it, and you know how much I love it, and we will continue to trek on no matter the circumstances. Amen and amen. Okay, so any questions? And that was a joke because none of you are in class right now, and I don't see any of you physically, so there are no questions, so I'm gonna keep going. Let's talk about protist. Okay. In your book, this is the kind of the first page of the chapter. This is an amazing blood smear of the most common protist that I will talk about with you and that you will probably hear in your lifetime. And that is the Protist Plasmodium falciparum. That probably sounds like gibberish to you, but to most in the medical field, that sounds like the protist that causes malaria. Very common disease, especially in the African region. Those of African American descent have the condition sickle cell. In some cases, you might have heard me talk about this before. This is a blood smear of red blood cells, the filled-in circles, and it looks like they're in the background. Those are healthy red blood cells. Notice these circles that kind of have like circles in them, like open circles in them. These are filled in. This one's kind of open. Okay, that's an unhealthy red blood cell. It's not very good at all. And then notice these blood cells that have these sort of dark purplish things in them. In your book, you'll see the texture of these, but these are infected red blood cells. Okay, these have Protist, Plasmodium falciparum in them. This person has malaria. You're in the pathology lab and you see this. You call a doctor and you're like, yeah, this person has malaria. And you're like, all right, well, let's get to work on that. Okay, keep in mind, as we learn about Protist, I want you to learn the highlights, okay? I'm not expecting you to know the difference between, every single zoocyte, because there are sporozoocytes, trophocytes, merocytes, and gametocytes. There are all kinds of things. Now, you will learn about a couple of them, but I want you to hit the high points, okay? I want you to tell me the stages of the Protist. I want you to hit the big points of the cycle. Don't worry about all these complex names, okay? If you have questions, talk to me, email me. We'll get through it, okay? But you're smart. You'll figure it out. So let's dive right in. Protist, ballpark term, very, very, very ballpark term. The big thing about Protist is divided into two kingdoms, okay? Two kingdoms. And let's talk about that in a second, because real quick, even the word Protist, right? Pro means first. Tist, I have no idea what that means. I don't know where they put that on. But Protist is a sort of first organism, very first organism, right? It's very, it's not very diverse, okay? It's very simplistic. These are some very simplistic organisms, okay? Some are animal-like, some are plant-like. We'll get into that. The big thing you need to know about Protists is they are microorganisms, right? Pro meaning first, simple. Microorganisms with eukaryotic cells, okay? Right now, you should be asking yourself, what does it mean to be eukaryotic, okay? I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. And by a couple minutes, I mean a couple seconds. This is amazing lecturing with like no hands in the air, because I can just like talk. I usually talk very fast and like no one's got their hand in the air. It's just like, I assume you know it. Okay, now after that awkward silence, that wasn't really silent. Eukaryotic means that they have membrane-bound organelles, right? So, the next question I'm going to ask, unicellular, multicellular? I'll give you another awkward pause to think about such. While you're thinking about that, keep in mind that I will not let these lectures go very long. I mean, especially because no one's like interrupting me. I mean, I'd be shocked if this goes over 15 minutes. But now that we got this awkward pause over, the answer is both, okay? Protists are microorganisms that are eukaryotic. They can be unicellular or multicellular, okay? I'm in this first paragraph kind of up here on the second page of your book probably. But let's keep going. That's kind of the general term. Protists are eukaryotic organisms. They're microorganisms. Micro meaning small, organism meaning an organism. That's pretty self-explanatory. But Protists can be unicellular, they can be multicellular. And there's a special term that we use. Remember in my class, you have to know the definition of words. And that is colonies, okay? This is colonies. So protists that are, come on, cursor. Protists that are multicellular are called colonies, okay? That's in bold on the second page of your book there, of the chapter. A lot of protists are microorganisms that are unicellular, but colonies are protists that are microorganisms that are multicellular, okay? Very important. Am I going to ask you point blank, what is a multicellular protist called? And you say colonies. Am I going to ask that on the test? No. I'm going to word it in some weird way, like Sally Lou came in, you know how I do it, and you see a multicellular organism, how would you label this protist? You would say colonies, right? Y'all know how I do those weird questions. Okay? So, Protists. I keep talking about how it's a very general term. I'm talking about these two kingdoms. What does that mean? Okay, so the two kingdoms that you need to understand for protists are protozoa. Okay, that is very animal-like. That this would we're talking about malaria. This is probably the one that Plasmodium falciparum falls in. Protozoa are animal-like. All right, write that down. Write that down. Write that down. Protozoa, animal-like. That should make sense. No, I'm not going to say that. Let's just keep going. The second kingdom that protists fall into, kind of, sort of, is Chromista, okay? You remember from, I guess, chapter 11, we learned about 7 kingdoms. Protists are going to split into 2 right here. Protozoa, right? That's animals. And Chromista, that's plant-like protists, okay? Protozoa is for animal-like protists. Chromista are plant-like protists. The way I would remember that is protozoa has Z-O. All right, so you can think of zoo, and then A, the zoo has animals, animal-like protists. The Chromista is just the other one. So let's talk about and then again, that's in kind of like this 3rd or 4th paragraph here. There are protists that fall into a 3rd category, okay? There are protists that fall into a 3rd category called fungi, okay? Very general term, very general kingdom. We'll talk more about fungi later in this series, okay? For the most part, you should be thinking to yourself some of these basic questions. Protozoa, are they heterotrophic or autotrophic? I'll give you an awkward pause of a moment to think about such, right? And then the answer is both, right? Because the protists that are protozoa, they are probably what kind of, how do they get their energy? They're probably heterotrophic, right? I'm assuming you're getting all these right so I can keep going. But the protists that fall in the kingdom Chromista are probably what? How do they get their energy? They're probably what? Correct. That was very awkward. Correct. They're probably autotrophs, all right? They probably are photosynthetic. Almost all protists will need water to live and to function. That should ring some bells because that makes them very similar to bacteria and not viruses. And what am I about to say? That protists are what kind of organisms? They're living organisms, right? Because they need these things to survive, all right, to live and function. It's actually there in that last little sentence there, I think. Okay. Come on, cursor. There it is. Anyway. Okay, going down to one of the last paragraphs on the 2nd page is, actually real quick, let's take a pause and I'll show you my notes for this point. Okay. I made this, so protist, microorganisms made of eukaryotic cell. Should have said cells there. Notice that they are eukaryotic cell. They could be unicellular or multicellular. Write that down. Colonies are protists made of many cells. And then I made this kind of chart. This made sense to me. But, so you have protists. Whoops, I'm trying to look at this through the lens. So you have protists. You have protozoa. They're animal-ish. And you have chromista that are plant-ish. And then you'll see here in the middle, protists can be fungi-ish, but chromista and protozoa can be fungi-ish. That's a weird category we'll talk about later. But this is kind of where I'm at right now. These are kind of the main points I've hit so far. Okay, so back to the book. And we're kind of getting on the home stretch here. I'm on the back half of class. Keep in mind, my next lecture will not be as long because I won't go through that monologue. Okay, so big thing you need to know is that protists are usually motile. Okay, they're usually motile. They can move on their own. Now, what should you be thinking right now? How are they moving on their own? Okay, how can they move on their own? What's causing them to move on their own? Think about it. Think about it. You should know some things that help people or organisms move on their own. We're going to talk about 2 of them. One of them you know very well. You actually know both of them. And I'm tired of doing this awkward guessing thing. I'm just going to tell you the answer now. And that is cilium and flagellum. Okay, flagellum helps them move around. Cilia, you might remember, are finger-like projections. We'll talk about them very shortly. But the big thing is that protozoas Protozoas are motile, okay? Protozoas are motile. They're heterotrophic and they're motile, okay? They can move. They can move on their own. One of the big things in biology is symbiotic relationships. Symbiotic relationships, okay? The symbiotic relationship for protozoa is a parasitic relationship, okay? They're mostly parasites. They harm the host, right? The host is harmed, and the protozoa are benefit, okay? I don't know if you've talked about symbiotic relationships in the past. If you haven't, you should. If you haven't and you need to know what they are, you need to come and talk to me at some point or email me, and I will explain the 3 that you need to know, okay? But for now, you need to know that protozoas are motile, right? They're heterotrophic mostly. If we're talking about protozoa, they're heterotrophic because they're animal-like, right? They can be multicellular or unicellular, right? And they have a parasitic relationship, meaning that the host gets harmed while the protozoa is benefited. Okay? So, one of couple of special cases here, not a couple, let's just talk about one special case, is a sporozoan. That's how you say that. A sporozoan. A sporozoan is a special type of protozoan that has to have a host to move on its own. Okay, so it probably doesn't have a what? Awkward second. Right, a flagellum or cilium. Okay, a sporozoan needs its host to move. Okay, it cannot move on its own. Okay, that's just that's worth noting. Actually, that's actually worth noting. Okay, let's talk about the life cycle. Also, take this moment. If for whatever reason you don't have this video on 2x speed, I feel very, very bad for you. Okay, I would have put this video on 2x speed the second I saw it up. Okay, especially with snow on the ground. Let's just watch this video and get it over with. Put this on 2x speed, run through this thing, and move on. Okay, I watch every video on 2x speed. Why wouldn't you? It's a literal blessing from the Lord. Also, I'll put random messages in the videos to see if you listen to them. And so at this time, I'd like to let you know that purple dolphins do jump out of the water on Wednesdays, okay? Whoever responds to that first, I can give you some kind of reward, but I don't know what it'll be. So let's see if you catch that. Let's talk about the life cycle of a protozoa. Okay, they do have a life cycle. This is a very, very, very simplified version. But that's fine, because I think it's a very good version. So, what happens is, you have a carrier, or a what? Give you a second. He commits crimes with both direction and magnitude. You guessed it, a vector. A vector is carrying malaria, and that, in this case, a mosquito. Mosquitoes are probably the most deadly animal in the world. So, a vector, like a mosquito, has the disease malaria, or the protist living in its bloodstream. It bites you, and it drops off what we call sporozytes, okay? Sporozytes, very important. This stage is called sporozytes, the infection of the protist, okay? These are sporozytes. They are mature, okay? They are mature forms of protist entering the host, meaning you. You are the host here. They infect the red blood cells. That's where they make their home. The sporozytes will multiply. Okay, they will enter the bloodstream and they will reproduce. Okay, how will they reproduce? They will reproduce asexually. Okay, they will reproduce asexually, meaning that like the host cells are going to reproduce on their own. Okay, you don't need like a mom protist and a dad protist to make new protists. No, sporozytes infect the host. Sporozytes reproduce asexually. Okay, reproduce asexually. Okay, so once they're mature, you get these things called gametocytes. Okay, gametocytes are the version of protist that will be picked up. Okay, they'll be picked up by another vector and taken to infect the next one. Okay, gametocytes are on the back end of the infection. Gametocytes are these newborn, newly produced protists, okay? Gametocytes. Gameto meaning like gamete, cytes meaning cells. These are like the sex cells of protists, okay? Gametocytes. And notice how another mosquito has come and bit this host and has picked up those gametocytes, which it will probably fly off and bite someone else, okay? So, run through it real quick. A vector bites the host, drops off the sporozytes, mature protist, gets infected in the bloodstream, reproduces asexually because you don't need a mommy and a daddy protist, right? They reproduce on their own by way of the host, all right? They have their own machinery. They're not viruses. Protists have their own machinery. They reproduce asexually, okay? They don't hijack the host. They reproduce asexually. They leave as gametocytes, okay? These are like the haploid cells when we talked about meiosis, okay? So gametocytes, they leave ready to infect a new host. This is the back end of the process, and then a new vector picks them up and carries them away, okay? I can already just, like, through the video, I just feel the intense wonder and awe of learning about protists, okay? But this process is very important to know. Am I going to quiz you on it? You bet your bottom dollar, buddy, okay? So, again, I will now move over again and show you my notes. I did this at a different time, so that's why it's kind of out of order. But you have sporozytes get dropped off, asexual reproduction to make new ones. The gametocytes will, the gametocytes are the kind of the sex cells, the haploid cells of protists that are ready to leave again. This is on the back end. The mosquito picks them up again and takes them here to like a new host, drops off the sporocytes. In fact, I'll even help you out. Okay, so the mosquito will drop them off of the host. The host will have sporozytes in it, asexual reproduction, forming of gametocytes, picked up by mosquito, dropped off at host, sporocytes into the host, asexual gametocytes, mosquito picks them up, host has sporozytes, starts all over, okay? And then again, there's my protist, and then my diagram, and then a sporozoan can't move on its own. It relies on host movement, okay? Very important. This is very, very comparable to something else we talked about in the last chapter, which I will leave you to guess what that is. Okay, we're almost done. We're at the tail end here. That was probably enough. I'm sure you were incredibly confused, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're like, man, this is so boring. I can't waste my time with this. I hope it's the latter. Remember, I'm open for questions. Again, put this video on 2x speed and get this out of here. Get this done with. If you haven't got my hidden message yet, you should go back and look for it. I think it was pretty funny. You probably won't think it's funny, but that's fine. But the structure of protozoans, protozoas. And again, I'm talking about animal-like protists. I'm talking about protozoa. How do they move? Because they can move on their own, but can we just inherently move? Can animals and organisms just inherently move because they want to, because they think about it? Not entirely, at least not to my knowledge, but I'm not saying it's impossible. They have something that helps them move, okay? And this comes in one of two forms. That could be the cilium, okay? Those are hair-like, finger-like projections. The cilium, we learned about those in chapter 5 last semester. Or they come in the flagellum. And you know the flagellum because we've not only learned about that in chapter 5, we also talked about that last chapter with bacteria. Very important that you know this. Okay, cilium and flagellum are not the same. Okay, I'm about to drop some heat on you right here. Okay, this is going to be very crucial. Cilium are finger-like projections. Okay, they, imagine, like, I did this example last semester, which I don't remember, but they do like this. They do like this and move things up, okay? They do things like that. So they start here, and let's say, they have like this pin, and they like row this pin up, okay? So the typical example for a cilium, the way it moves things or helps move an organism is like a rowboat fashion. So you can imagine like a rowboat, like a team that's rowing a boat, and like they're rowing at the same pace, okay? There's like a pace that they row at, okay? A flagellum is a whip-like structure. It is like probably the motor you see on like a boat that you might have or your friends might have like out on the lake. It's on the back of the organism, and it's kind of like a propeller-like, and it changes directions, right? It sits like this, sort of, and it like turns like that, and like alters the direction of like the waves and stuff like that. Okay, so this is how it moves and guides and directs it. So this is flagellum, right? It's like a whip-like motion like this. This is cilium, finger, hair-like projection like this. Okay? Why is that important? Because we're going to talk about something that you may have heard of, but that's amoeba. Okay? So amoeba, they have no fixed body shape. They kind of have this weird movement, this amoeboid movement. Okay, that's like the term they use. It's kind of weird. But what they do is they fall in this category of protozoa because they're animal-like. Amoeba are animal-like. They're not animals. They're protists. So they're animal-like protists, so they fall in the kingdom of protozoas. Okay? So amoeba, what they do is they create these things called pseudopods. Okay? Or the singular term for them is pseudopodium. Okay? But pseudopods will help the amoeba move. And basically, it's like this lethargic, wimpy, just totally out of it crawl. Okay? It's like they're crawling on the ground. Okay? If you want to like lay on the floor and imagine like dragging yourself across the floor. Okay? Like you can't raise up. You lay down and you stick your arms out and pull yourself forward. That's exactly how amoeba move. And that's called amoeboid movement. Okay? They use these things called pseudopods. They're filled with cytoplasm, and they like extend these pseudopods out, and the cilium walks the pseudopods out there and pulls them forward. Okay? So this video is getting kind of long, and this will be, again, the longest video I probably ever post in your class. But imagine you have this amoeba. Let's call this tennis ball an amoeba. I totally got this from my brother's room. He played tennis at a parent's house. But you have this amoeba. So what happens is this amoeba is stuck here, and it can't move, right? Like, what does it have to move? Well, what happens is, I'm trying to get like an angle here, is you can imagine these cilia step out and pull this thing forward, okay? And then it steps out in this rowing motion because they have cilia, okay? And it pulls it forward. And it pulls it forward, okay? That's exactly how amoeba move. They create these, so when I stick my fingers out like this, that is the what? The cilia, in the form of a pseudopod, pulls it forward, okay? That's how amoeba move. They use cilia to pull them forward, okay? I hope that example is as good as I thought it was. I thought that was like spot on, okay? And that's probably where I want to end today, okay? This video is super long, so make sure you watch it on 2x speed. That's what I would do. I put some Bible verses for you at the top of these notes. John 3:16 and then John 14:6. So cilia, whoop, come on, Braxton. Finger-like projection, rowboat. Okay, think of the rowboat example. You have two people on both sides, like rowing the boat at the same pace. Flagellum, whip-like structure. It's the motor on the back of the boat. Okay, like projector-like, does like that. And these help propel protozoa. Protozoa. You should understand the difference between protozoa and chromista. Amoeboid movement is developed of bulges called pseudopods. Right, they're filled with cytoplasm. We're going to talk a little bit about that in this form, the next video. And then crawling on the ground, okay? If you want to practice this, you should lay on the ground, stick your arms out, and, like, drag your body across the ground. That would be, sorry, I'm trying to do something, two things at once here. That would be an example of amoeboid movement, okay? I feel like that was pretty bulky first video. Again, I'll keep you updated on when I will be there. In the classroom. It may be some time. Put these videos on 2x speed, okay? Like, do not sit around and like ruin your days off learning about biology. Me personally, I think that would be an amazing way to spend the day. But I know you're probably rolling your eyes right now, thinking that would be atrocious. The fact that you've watched this for 30-something minutes is kind of impressive. Again, if you didn't get my hidden message, you should. I will think of a reward to the first person that responds to what the hidden message was. Okay? So, with that being said, I pray you are having a safe, enjoyable break with the snow. And I pray that you have an amazing weekend coming up. I was trying to think of something there. Couldn't think of it. But yeah, it's kind of an awkward ending. But that'll do. All right. Thank you.